Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Audible.com, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Visit audible.com/twist for your free audiobook. And by Walker Corporate Law, a boutique corporate law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. For more information, visit them at walkercorporatelaw.com. And by Amazon Web Services, the fastest growing, hottest startups build their businesses on Amazon Web Services. Learn more at aws.amazon.com/startups.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Lynda Weinman's been at it for a long time, and I've been trying to interview her for a couple of years now, and I finally was able to get her to join us today. So, Lynda Weinman, yeah, from lynda.com. Here she is. So it seems like every conversation, welcome.
Thank you.
I'll pour you some water. Every conversation I have with people about education, it seems like your name gets brought up. You're, I think, one of the few founders in technology who've actually made it work. Can we see the photo of how it all started? This is a great photo. We're going down memory lane.
There we go.
So that's you. And I can tell by the computer screens they're CRTs.
Correct.
Those are not...
Dates me.
It's a bit of a tell.
Yes.
And I think those are the original iMacs.
Yes, they are.
So that puts this photo...
96, 97.
Wow. And where is this, and is this exactly where it started?
Well, lynda.com actually started in my house, in my basement, and it was the website that I used to teach myself web design, and I was a teacher at the time at Art Center College of Design, and I wanted to have my students read a book on web design, and one didn't exist, so I decided I was going to write it, and I was researching it, and lynda.com was my sandbox to teach myself web design. And that photo was from Ojai, California, which was a few years later after the success of my first couple of books. And my husband and I moved to Ojai, California, and I really missed teaching. And so the wonderfully supportive person that he is, he said, well, what if we opened a classroom in Ojai and maybe people would come to see you here? And sure enough, people traveled from all over the world, and we had a pretty successful classroom business for several years during the rise of the dot-coms, and subsequently when the bust happened, we decided to put a lot of our lessons online, and that's really how the site as people know it today came about.
Oh gosh, I love doing a commercial for Audible. Why? Because I'm a huge fan. I've been using Audible for years and years and years. I have hundreds of books in my collection. I use the Platinum. I'm a Platinum member, which means I get like 20 plus credits a year. And I just buy audiobooks because I feel good about myself when I buy an audiobook, because I know I'm going to get something that's either going to entertain me or inform me, and hopefully both. I love nonfiction, anything to do with business or marketing or motivation. I love science. I love science fiction. I love poker. All those books are there ready for me to load onto my iPad and my Android phone, my Samsung, and onto my iPhone and onto my BlackBerry. I load that stuff up. And then when I'm on a plane or I'm driving home on the 405 in the Tesla, boom, I connect on Bluetooth and I'm listening to something and making myself more intelligent, hopefully, or just being, more well-rounded. It's a great service. 150,000 titles in every genre, and you can sync between your Kindle or your devices. It works perfect. So they have this really cool thing where you can read it on the Kindle and you can listen to it. I don't do that because I just like to listen. I like to relax because my eyes are tired at the end of the week. But hey, here's a special offer just for our audience. Go to audible.com/twist, audible.com/TWIST, and in your 30-day trial, you're going to get a free book. Yes, the book of the week. And we also had an Audible iPad contest, and my friend here, Akil, won, and he gets an iPad mini signed by me. So I'm going to sign it, best at Jason. And hopefully I didn't ruin your iPad mini. Congratulations on the contest, and go ahead and thank Audible on Twitter by going at Audible_COM. And I forgot, what is my book of the week? What is my choice of the week? I have two for you. The first one is called One of a Kind, The Story of Stu the Kid Unger, the world's greatest poker player. This is such an amazing story of a tragic figure, but he was literally the best card player ever, or at least up until that time, and it is riveting. My next is Wheat Belly. Now, this seems like something like, hey, why would you give us like a diet book? It's more than a diet book. It's a science book. And this guy, William Davis, who wrote the book, is on a jihad against wheat because he explains the entire science of how we modified wheat and how when you eat wheat, it spikes your insulin and you get fat. And I lost 10 pounds just after reading this book because I took wheat out of my diet. I'm not telling you to take wheat out of your diet. I'm telling you to download the book and get Audible. Go to audible.com/twist. But you probably should take all that wheat out of your diet. It's not good for you. Anyway. Audible's amazing. Thank you at Audible_COM on Twitter. And let's get back to the program.
And was putting them online a direct reaction to the fact that people couldn't afford to travel to classes or the cost of classes? Was that?
Well, it was partially that travel in the U.S. was, really compromised because of 9/11, and the dot-com crash had just happened, and so a lot of the businesses that had been able to fly out and come to a week-long course, an in-person course, couldn't come anymore. And we had already started to create VHS tapes, and so when we had about 20 of them, we decided, well, we could put this online in a subscription form. And the first month, 30 people signed up. It was a lot less than we thought, and the first year, 1,000 people. And so it was a slow go in the beginning.
Here's the first website. I think we actually have the
yeah,
first website.
That was the website. If you do show it, that was my very first website. With the center tag and transparent, a transparent GIF, and
that's pretty impressive.
A seamless background. You can't really see the background, but it had a pattern that was seamless, and so trying out a lot of the techniques that were really early in the day, and you needed a different tool for every kind of graphic you were going to put online, and people didn't know how to do it, so it was really
on this
exciting.
monitor you can actually see the really nice grading you put there. Yeah, it's like a great parchment paper or something.
Thank you.
Well, this was a big deal though in '96 or so when you could actually change the background of a website because prior to that they were all gray.
That picture is from '95. That was when I started. I bought the URL lynda.com for $35. And had no idea it would turn into a business or become the hub that it is today.
$30 people signing up at 1,000 the first year. You probably thought about shutting it down, I would bet.
We did. In fact, my husband loves to tell the story of there was a moment in time where I wanted to sell it. And I had a book agent, and I went to him and said, maybe somebody would like to buy this from us. And my husband said, no, let me show you. This is actually growing really fast and doing really well, and I think we should just sit on it. There's no reason at all to sell it, because it wasn't until maybe year 4 or 5 that it really hit critical mass. And what a lot of people don't realize, because we really got notoriety in some communities through the investment that we took on. I mean, in the business community, I would say. But we're an 18-year overnight sensation. So this is 18 years in.
And just to give people the scale of it now, how many, I don't know if you disclose how many paid members, but I know there's millions of people who signed up for the service.
Yeah.
That would be correct.
Correct.
And it's $25 a month still? Or?
It's $25 a month for individuals, and then we have site licenses, and we work, actually, we're very proud that we've been adopted into 40% of the universities in the United States in one form or another, with either a small site license or a small license. We have licenses that start with 5 people, and so sometimes it's just a department. And then we have other installations that are campus-wide, like at UCLA and USC.
Wow. And how many courses are now courses and videos? Because it really, the innovation was video-based training.
Correct, and I say to my staff all the time, our vernacular is to call them courses, but I think when people come to the site and they don't realize what we're talking about, that what we call a course is a collection of videos. It's a very carefully crafted curriculum that goes in a linear order and builds foundationally until it's over. But what we do is we package them in what we call courses. It's really, if you could think of it as a folder of videos that all go in an order. But people consume these videos in and out of order, and we actually love that is how it's being used, and that makes it an incredibly flexible learning system, because some people want to learn something from scratch and other people just want to come in and get one answer to a problem, and so it can serve either type of visitor or either type of member.
And people thought, wow, with YouTube and a lot of people putting out free videos, this would be something that would be a threat to the business. It's turned out the business has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. You've had over $100 million invested from Excel, Spectrum, Meritech, some of the biggest names, and certainly Excel, a huge name in venture capital, and did over $100 million in revenue last year. The business has grown while many free options have emerged.
Correct.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, our mantra is we have to be better than free, and I think when you go on a free service, you don't always get what you pay for. Sometimes you find something fantastic, but often you don't, and it just takes a lot of time, and people are willing to pay an affordable price to know that there's a certain level of quality and continuity between the ideas. I mean, Lynda.com was founded by an educator, myself, and then it's filled with hundreds of other educators. And so one of the things that we do is we carefully vet any contributor to make sure that not only are they a domain expert, but that they're actually a good teacher. That's really important to us, that that they're actually imparting knowledge. Because a lot of times, people are either showing off, or there's some sort of catch where I'll show you this much, then pay me this amount for this next bit. And because we're sort of a one price and you get everything, and it's a very low price compared to what it would cost to even buy a computer book or go to a seminar or a conference or anything like that. And also I think the speed of access is something that really differentiates us, where if you think about a lot of the online learning types of businesses, they have either they're synchronous, where a class starts on this date and it ends on this date, and you have sort of weekly lessons, or you have assignments, or you have to pass this before you can get to this next level, get this badge, and then you go to this next level. And we just don't have any of those kinds of barriers, so it's really quick. I was just sitting in my hotel room on this trip, and I had to put a link in Gmail, and I'd never done that before in an email. I didn't want to just list the URL. I wanted to highlight a word and make it go to a link. And I didn't know how to do it, so I went on lynda.com, and within 2 minutes, I could find the exact part of the video where that lesson was told. I learned it, I did it, and I was done. And so a lot of people use lynda.com as more of a reference library or job, sort of insurance, where someone's going to ask me to do something that I've never done before, and I can go in and I don't have to go through an enrollment process or waiting until a class starts or get a badge or do any of those things. I can just go right to that lesson, and I think that's really powerful, and it becomes a complement to other kinds of education, which is why we've been adopted so widely within K through 12 and university level education, because we're really a complement to in-person, we're a complement to online, and we're something that extends beyond school, because a lot of people are already in jobs or looking for jobs where they have skills. They don't have to start at the beginning of something, or they're not, it's just a very flexible learning system that works really well.
Let's talk about price again, because I do think it's important. When we see, yesterday Mitch brought up, or a university from the Southwest that shall not be named, that charges people thousands and thousands of dollars, and maybe they get a varying degree of quality from that $10,000 to spend. University of Phoenix, obviously, we're talking about. He didn't want to say it, I said it. But you see things like University of Phoenix that they're charging people $5,000, $10,000, GI grants, and you came to the conclusion that it was $25 a month should be the price, which was less than an O'Reilly book or, the Lost Manual or anything you would get at the Apple store for $50. How did you exactly get to that innovation? Because you were one of the first people to charge for subscriptions online, but you were certainly innovated in that this radically low price for something that video professor was charging, on infomercials, what, $2.99 a course or $99 a course,
Correct,
and take us to that moment where you picked the price.
Well, Well, I remember the moment really well. We were sitting around, our company was maybe about 11 people, and we were sitting around in one room, and one of our employees was a part-time student at community college. And he said, anything over $25 I'm going to question, but anything under would be an okay price for me. And we thought, well, we can always raise the price. Let's start there. And we did, and it just seemed to stick. And in the beginning, it really, as I said, wasn't very successful. So we didn't think the price was too low. We certainly felt like that was as low as we could possibly go, but it wasn't a lot of analytics that went behind it, to be perfectly honest. It was that one comment, and that we tried it. We just thought, let's try it and see how it works. And then why we've never raised the prices is because it's been so successful, and it seems like it is kind of a no-brainer to spend a very modest amount of money, something that would be a few trips to Starbucks or a dinner out or whatever, to have access to really fantastic, credible experts who are also good teachers and know that you're going to get answers to the problems that you have or learn how to do things that you need to do.
Hey, everybody. What a great episode we're having. And I want to just take a minute and thank Scott Walker of the Walker Corporate Law Group for helping support This Week in Startups, and he's been doing that for many years. Scott's a great guy. He's a friend of mine, and he runs a great law firm called Walker Corporate Law. And they have lawyers with 10, 20 years of experience. And these are not junior associates. These are people who worked at some of the biggest firms, but now they're running this boutique agency, which they focus in on startups. And what that means is they're not going to kill you on the bills. They're going to take their time. They're going to spend a lot of time with you to help you understand how to run your company. And an example of that is Meritech engaged Walker Corporate Law for their $2,900 all-you-can-eat startup package. Then they used them for their seed financing and their stock option plan. They do all kinds of stuff like mergers and acquisitions, licensing agreements, and terms of service and privacy policies. You can call Scott Walker at 415-979-9998. 415-979-9998. Or you can just email Scott at Walker Corporate Law. And, they believe in fixed fees, which is great. You could say, hey, I have this work I need done. I have to incorporate. I have to raise an angel round. I'm doing a convertible note. And they'll tell you, okay, great. It's going to be, $2K, $1K, $1,500, whatever it is. And then they're going to stick to that. So you don't get that sticker shock, which, let me tell you something. When you get a legal bill and you get that PDF and you have to hit open, my God, that's the worst day of a startup founder's life. When you have to open that bill up and you don't know what's coming, it could be a $10,000 bill, a $20,000 bill. That is some scary stuff. With Scott, you're never going to have that problem. Scott is an awesome guy. I really appreciate him and his team supporting This Week in Startups. We couldn't do the show without him. Everybody follow at Scott Ed Walker on Twitter and say thank you at Scott Ed Walker for supporting This Week in Startups. Let's get back to this episode.
And I guess when you see the aggregate numbers just heading in the right direction, it can give you confidence that we don't need to actually increase the price.
Right. I mean, we actually never talk about increasing the price. It's not even a topic of conversation. We're really happy with our pricing.
Let's talk about the teachers and recruiting them. I've noticed people I know or people I know of in the industry go and do courses. They put an extraordinary amount of time into doing them. It must take them weeks of preparation.
Correct. Yes.
And I'm guessing days at least to film.
Yes.
They probably lose money doing it, these teachers, compared to what their day jobs are.
Actually, quite the opposite.
Okay, explain.
We have in-house teachers who are staff members and get, benefits, and that's one type of position.
Yep.
But the majority of contributors to Lynda.com are paid royalties based on the popularity of their views. And the majority of them are earning more money on Lynda.com than they are writing books or magazine articles or sometimes teaching at physical colleges. They're earning more. And you'll see when you go on Lynda that some teachers have contributed 1 or 2 courses, but other people have contributed 20 courses, 30 courses, 40 courses. And when you see somebody who's created dozens of courses, most likely they're earning their entire living on Lynda.com and very happy to be doing so.
So it's possible teachers making north of $100,000 a year or $200,000 or $300,000 a year on Lynda.
We have some teachers who are making north of those figures.
Wow. So this means there must be competition to teach certain courses. If HTML5 comes out, do You only have one HTML5 course? Or how do you handle
Yeah, I mean,
3 experts
you're-
wanting to do that?
You're exactly right. That is an issue, and it's funny because that was one of the genesis of wanting to create videos in the first place, was that I was a book author, and I'd written about web design, and my book publisher didn't want me to write about Photoshop because they already had their great Photoshop authors. And because they didn't want me to, I created VHS tapes on topics like Flash and fireworks and Dreamweaver and things that I couldn't get the book publisher to let me publish on. And so I have been in that position where I've wanted to write and teach about things, and those slots were taken. And I do believe that does happen on lynda.com. And it's only natural, I guess, that I think, I'll say we have a lot of voices. Let's say, take Photoshop, for example. I don't know the number of Photoshop instructors that we have, but there are so many things you can do with Photoshop and so many different angles. But we might have one Photoshop fundamentals or essentials course. And that slot, quite frankly, is very coveted, and it is likely taken by somebody who we're happy with. And I think that is just the nature of the beast. You don't want to have exactly the same course taught by many, many people. On the other hand, part of why teachers really love lynda.com in the classroom is because it gives different voices. You may be teaching Photoshop one way, but isn't it fantastic for your students to see the wide possibilities and all the different applications of Photoshop, and get all those different voices and perspectives of people who are doing it for portrait photography and for blogging and for putting on Etsy or whatever. We have so many different reasons why we might need to learn Photoshop for PowerPoint. And so that's how we've tried to do it, is to create all of the different perspectives and give a lot of voices and depth. The other thing is lynda.com is a lot like television programming. We're a subscription service, and so we really want people to stay subscribed. That's our goal, is to keep them as lifelong members. And their lifetime value is what we covet. It's not necessarily selling them one class. So we're always thinking about how can we make topic areas more interesting, more in depth. We started to create documentaries, which are more profiling people who are in the field and really interesting applications and ways to be using in industry things like photography and web design and even PowerPoint. We have a documentary on Nancy Duarte, who created the PowerPoint for the Al Gore movie, the really famous
Inconvenient Truth.
Inconvenient Truth.
Right.
Amazing PowerPoint. I mean, just like one of the most spectacular designers. She's the coach to all the TED Talks, to help all the TED speakers make fantastic PowerPoints. So, and then, if you think about it, your boss asks you to do something in PowerPoint or Keynote, and you need typography skills, you need color, you need composition, you might want to embed a video, you might want to know how to add audio. And the fact that we've created this incredible library that has a lot of interrelationships, and it's really been thoughtfully programmed like you would program curriculum, it becomes incredibly more valuable.
Yeah, and let's talk about how wide Lynda becomes, because you've raised money, the revenue is extraordinary, and it all happened overnight in 18 years, as you said.
Exactly.
But now, wow, what an amazing position you're in to actually do a documentary, which obviously, that's got quite a different production cost than doing it in a stand-up studio.
Right. Which we were doing before we took on the investment.
Right.
I mean, I think one of the maybe distinctive things about us was we were pursued by investors very heavily for probably about 8 years, and we didn't want to take any money because we were self-sustaining, and we were able to do things like fund documentaries. I mean, I know that there's a huge popularity around free, but the reality is when you charge for something, you can pay your teachers, you can pay your employees, you can grow your company, and you can do things like reinvest in yourself and do wonderful new kinds of programming. And I don't think you have to be greedy about it, and I think that's maybe where we took this stance. Let's make a really affordable price and just try to get critical mass and enough people to support it where we could actually do wonderful things with it.
And I hear from people they want to support Lynda. Like they almost feel like it's a trust. It's almost like
Sure.
a PBS or NPR feeling about the brand.
Yeah. We do have that kind of cachet. I mean,
is that something you curated, or is that something that happened?
It's something that happened, but it's something that we know is ours to lose. It takes years to gain that kind of trust, and you do a couple missteps and you can lose it instantly. And so, we care passionately about treating our members with respect and about really creating excellent content. And if you were to come to our office and meet the teams of people, they take so much pride in doing the most excellent work that they can do. And that's a really wonderful culture to be fostering, and it's a lot. We actually have a lot of fun. We really love what we do.
And how wide will it get? I mean, the great thing about the name Lynda, other than it's a lovely name, is it's not software and technology. It doesn't limit you to that, even though you came from web design. And it does seem like the site is now getting more and more into other categories of software, clearly, over time. It's not like you stopped at web design and said you can't do Excel, or
Sure.
when you're doing a lot of web service companies, it seems. Where does it end? Do you see this brand eventually teaching language or math or other things that might be needed for business? I mean, could it become a global education brand that takes on, Pearson or any continuing ed, like almost like a Learning Annex or something?
I certainly think we have that potential. I would say it's not really on the discussion table at the moment. I mean, I think we have stuck to topics that we're really passionate about and where we have a lot of domain expertise ourselves. And it's not to say that we will not expand into other topics or open up the platform to other ideas. That is certainly within the range of possibilities. But we've been growing 30 to 40% a year throughout the last 4 to 5 years. And it's frankly going about as fast as we can take. There are lots of other ideas, and I think this is a challenge to all entrepreneurs. You can go off and say, is the grass greener there? Should I go after this other thing that could be bigger than what I'm doing today, or should I stick with something that's really working and really differentiating us? And I'm not saying we will never do those things, but they're certainly not going to happen in the very near future.
You started with in-person classes. Mm-hmm. Is that where this will eventually wind up? There seems to be this new experiential retail movement. It seems to me a Lynda store in every mall would be a great use of all this empty space where people could actually go somewhere and take an affordable course. Mm-hmm. You must have discussed this. Is it something, expand on why you would use it or not? Or
I mean, I actually love in-person education and am a huge advocate for the things that happen differently in person than what happens online. And for lynda.com, at the moment, we feel that we have such an important role and position in the industry. So many people rely on us to keep their skills current and to keep up the kind of programming that we're doing, that it's sort of all hands on deck, focused on that part of the business, which is much more scalable. It could grow much larger. We recently purchased a company in Austria that creates similar kind of education in French, Spanish, and German, and is starting to build out Japanese. And we're very excited about going into local markets and localizing what we're doing in other countries and for other populations, underserved populations. And so that's an area of expansion for us. But
so international,
we're really not looking to fundamentally change our business model. And I think if we were to offer something in a completely disparate topic matter, it wouldn't really work within the construct of what we've built. What we've done is we've expanded into adjacent areas that make sense. And the number one request that we actually get from customers is, when are you going to release a course on something that we haven't yet released? So there's a huge insatiable demand for what we are teaching. We're really good at teaching the subject matter that we're in. It's a lot of fun. Like we'll get requests to do compliance training, things like sexual harassment or affirmative action or things like that. And, it's just not going to be necessarily as fun to us to teach that as what we're
Right.
teaching. We just really love the space that we're in, and it's a needed space. I mean, this is baseline skills for every single person who's looking, even, high school kids, they have to know skills like what we teach. In fact, I met a teacher here today who teaches at high school and uses lynda.com in her classroom, and they're journalist students, and they're at Palo Alto, Ohio. I'll give a shout out to Ojai. I don't know where she is, but there she is,
Yeah.
doing amazing work at Palo Alto High with her journalism program. And these kids are actually going out and they're making videos and they're interviewing people and they're learning presentation skills and so many real world wonderful skills. And if she doesn't know how to explain to them how to do something in WordPress or do something in Final Cut Pro or Premiere or whatever it is, it's a great resource, and it's just liberating to the teacher to be able to let the students go off and learn it on their own.
Is the K through 12 something that you anticipated would happen, or you just started getting phone calls or seeing, credit cards come in from, schools?
It wasn't anything that we ever anticipated to happen. Excuse me. It started with a college teacher coming to us and saying that she was running a multimedia studies program within a series of community colleges, and she would love to be recommending lynda.com instead of textbooks to her students, and could we create a product for her where she could do some tracking, that was going to be the missing piece that the individual subscription service didn't offer. So the very first version of what has now become a product that we sell into education was created specifically for her school. And today what that product looks like is it's everything that an individual, it's access to the whole library, which is, it's a one, all you can consume, all you can eat kind of knowledge library. But then there are background analytics where you can look at usage and adoption, and you can drill into the actual student to see or employee, because it's also used within industry as well, to see who is learning what and how much they're using it and all of that.
So this it's not quite an assessment tool, but more of a
usage tool.
Usage tool. And how long has that been in the market?
I think we created it about 8 years ago, but we didn't have a sales force. We just, if people called, we would, it was all very grassroots.
Yeah.
I mean, what's really interesting about us is that we didn't really have MBAs. We didn't come into this thinking this is a giant business. We just came into this really purely because it was our passion and it was how we wanted to earn our living, and we figured out the business on the fly and kept adapting to what the market conditions wanted and responding to the market validation of what our customers were telling us. And it wasn't, I think we hired our first, lead of sales maybe about 5 years ago. And now we have 100-person sales team that
100-person sales
that
team.
sells to education and industry, and that part of the business is growing really fast. I mean, there's a huge demand for it, because if you think about it, what we are replacing, we're just a much more efficient replacement to sending employees to seminars or even having trainers come in and teach things. Because I think one of the benefits of a library like ours is that you can enter at any level. So you might have one person in your organization who's really skilled at Excel. They just run circles around everybody. And they need to go right to the, pivot table, the really complicated formula that, the one little piece that they don't have yet, where you have someone else who's never touched Excel. And it's just really convenient because you can have those same two people at the same exact moment in time studying different things on this one service. So it's incredibly more efficient and economical.
As an entrepreneur now, raising venture capital, do you feel extra pressure on the business, or did it actually make the pressure go down because you felt like, wow, we've got an extraordinary amount of runway to an already profitable business?
I think maybe it's increased the pressure a little bit, but it's been increasing over time because it's just growing bigger and bigger. And so the stakes of our decisions are just so much higher than they ever were before. It used to be you'd make a mistake and it was maybe a few $1,000s or whatever,
Yeah.
and now a mistake can be a few $1,000,000. I mean, it's the stakes are really high, but I think they're really high. We've always run our business as if it was venture funded, because in 18 years we've been profitable every one of those 18 years. And that's because we didn't really feel we ever had a choice to be anything but profitable. We realized that if we weren't, we couldn't keep the business. We'd have to, let people go, or we'd have to stop doing it. And that's been our key motivation, is that we love what we're doing and we want to keep doing it. And now, I walk around the parking lot. We have a 12-acre campus where we do all of our film production and, have all of our engineering team, or not all, we have locations all over. And I look at all the cars and the people buying houses and, the new families, and it's an amazing amount of responsibility as a founder to realize that all of those people are counting on you. And so it is definitely stressful.
Somebody in the venture community referred to it as the Google of education. What do you think of that?
I think it's true. I think there are a lot of similarities in that, we have a wonderful campus. We really celebrate design, collaboration, creativity. We have a lot of employee benefits. I think, demonstrate all the time that we care deeply about our employees, and we walk the walk. We don't just talk the talk.
And where is this all going? I mean, you can't raise this amount of venture capital, have this amount of revenue without going public and stuff like that. I mean, that's the trajectory this is on. How do you think that changes things?
I agree that it means that there's some sort of exit at some point in time, but we're very lucky in that, we held off for so long and we had so many venture capitalists pursuing us, and they knew that one of our sort of hot buttons was that we didn't want to have an exit date. We want to build this and we want to grow this in the right way, and we want to be the founders. We don't want to get kicked out. This was a minority investment in our company, and we are still in complete control, which is wonderful. And the investors, because they're late stage investors, it's a different kind of mentality. I think late stage investors are really looking for a great management team. They're looking for a company that is in it for the long haul, that is very focused on staying profitable and being a responsible, sustainable business. And so our investors are really happy. They're delighted to have been chosen. We actually had a lot of people very unhappy with us that they were not chosen, and it was a tough spot to be in, to disappoint people who really love our business and really cared about our business. It was a very strange situation to be in.
Yeah, very, very unique.
Yeah.
And how many VCs did you wind up talking to in that whole process?
I'm going to say maybe 20 or 30.
Wow.
And and plenty more that we didn't, whose calls weren't returned, sadly,
Yeah, we have to stay focused on the business.
Yes, and it is a big distraction.
Raising money, big distraction.
Big distraction, yeah.
You don't seem to chase a lot of the bells and whistles in education. You seem very methodical and slow in rolling out features. Testing, assessment, badges, gamification. Take me through a lot of the stuff we might see here that people are really focused on, these sort of features that maybe Lynda, obviously you're aware of them. Obviously you have discussions of implementing them 5 or 10 years ago and haven't.
Right.
Take me through some of those bells and whistles that you haven't done and why.
Okay. And this isn't to say that we will never do these things. They haven't been the top priority to us.
Right.
I think the top priority to us has been to come to market quickly and to have a very kind of low barrier to entry. So when you log on to lynda.com, you can go straight to the thing you want to learn. You can learn it in 5 minutes and you can get out.
Right.
Now, when you have gamification and you have badges and you have assessments, those things take time. And maybe you can't get to the lesson you want to get to because you haven't earned that badge or you haven't, passed that part of it. I'm currently evaluating some language software because we bought this company in Graz, and I hate to even say this publicly that I'm trying to learn German because I don't want anybody to test my abilities just yet. But I've been looking at some language software, and it's been really frustrating to me because I don't want to learn written German. I only want to learn spoken German. And so, I go through and I have to pass a written test before I can get to the next vocabulary word that I want. And I think part of what we've done is created this incredibly flexible learning environment that's very direct. You don't have to wait for it to, what date does it start on? You don't have to, do any of that. Now, all of that said, we get requests to do assessment on many levels. Our sales team would love it because it has been a barrier to many sales. Well, we don't want to implement lynda.com at our corporation because we have to see if people are actually learning what you're teaching.
Yeah.
And we do have something called a certificate of completion, which only states that you have watched all of the movies within a course. And you can print it out, and many people, I'm told, attach these to resumes and show that they've finished certain courses of study. We've been sent pictures from members who have them plastered all over their room, and so it's not to say that people do not want this. But I think given the choice of our priorities, should we focus on that, or should we focus on having training on Creative Cloud the minute it's announced out that day? Because part of doing assessment is, we all know as teacher, the teachers in the audience, that creating tests is, it is time consuming. And so it's just another barrier to us to, the publishing speed at which we publish. However, that said, we are working on it, and it is something that we will probably bring to lynda.com. It will definitely be optional because there are a big percentage of people that don't want it.
They just come in and snipe in, boom, I need
Definitely.
this problem solved. I don't need to take a test.
That's right.
I need
That's right.
to get back to work.
And they're just as valuable to us as the person who wants to watch something from beginning to end. And so, we really respect our members. We respect their learning styles. We respect their learning objectives. And that's something that I think is really powerful about what we've built.
Let's take a couple of questions from the audience. I'm sure people have a ton of questions. Yeah, here they go. Karen will get a microphone. And how many employees now?
I think it's 420.
Wow, what's that like to have
hundreds
that
of
many
authors.
after being like the only teacher at
I mean, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, it's wonderful,
Yeah.
and we love everybody, and it's a lot harder to build something by yourself with a few people than it is to build it with hundreds of people. It's very fun.
I'd love to hear the marketing story. How did you go from 30 initial users to, you must have 300,000 plus users at this point, based on your numbers and the price?
Yeah.
And then when did it really start to take off? Was that in the last few years, or has it been more of a steady growth?
It's a great question, and marketing has never really been our strong point, to be perfectly honest. The way that lynda.com has grown has been through word of mouth and through people liking the service and telling each other about it, which is word of mouth. And so even today, less than 10% of our growth in traffic can be attributed to marketing. So that means that 90% of it is word of mouth, which is really fantastic. It makes me very proud.
Yeah, having the Net Promoter Score, that just makes it, yeah.
And this is what I tell a lot of entrepreneurs, make sure that there's really, a good response to the product that you're building. It's, this market validation is something that we did. I mean, we sort of went such an unusual route in that, our goal was to keep the doors open and to keep doing what we love to do. And it wasn't to, get investors or to, figure out how to get marketing to work. And I think there's just a lot to be said about having a great product, and people will share with others if they like your product.
And I'm sure a lot of this corporate activity is bottom up, like
it's the
Yammer,
same thing.
where somebody
Absolutely.
bought it individually and then went to the boss and said, hey, this is how I'm solving our Excel problems.
And even within schools and within organizations, there's competition. So they realize that, that school has lynda.com. That means we should take lynda.com seriously and consider getting it at our school. And the same thing with businesses. And we do, we attend some conferences, and we do, it's not that we do no marketing at all.
Right.
But it isn't anything that we can directly relate to our growth, the bulk of our growth.
And you don't seem to mind people, how do we say it delicately, sharing their password once in a while. It seems like people do that sometimes, and you don't police it that heavily.
I think you're right. I think we don't police it as heavily as we could.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's something that we would love to button up better.
Yeah.
there's sort of a fine line between making things so difficult and so protected that you're punishing the paying honest people. And we are very heavily BitTorrented. Lynda.com is
unbelievable.
Stolen. And I mean, in a way, it's interesting because we're so popular on the BitTorrents. To me, it shows that if you were 100% free and there was no barrier of entry whatsoever, your content would rise to the top, which is flattering.
Right.
And there certainly are people who get it for free and then they decide to, come and buy it. It's also is a form of marketing. On the other hand, the onus is on us to make the experience of Lynda.com more powerful on Lynda.com than it is on the BitTorrents, and I believe that it is. We've recently implemented playlists which allow you to piece together curriculums. Teachers can share these. People.
Oh,
individual
like
people can
making
share.
a mixtape.
Exactly. I'm making
Yeah.
a mixtape of education. Like if you wanted to become a portrait photographer, you could combine our portrait photography, classes on lenses, classes on how to use QuickBooks, how to market your company, your portrait photography through blogging.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating.
It's amazing how many ways you can slice and dice the information that we've put them up in one organization, but there are numerous other ways to organize it. And so,
What about user contributions? Have you ever thought about allowing users to say, like, hey, here's my video, would
Yeah.
you, do they, I mean, it's one thing to find a teacher that way, which I'm sure you have, but
Right.
just straight up, like,
I
hey,
mean,
I did
sure.
a version
Sure,
of
we've
this?
thought about it. The concern is that our reputation is based on the quality of what we publish. And so how could you do it in a curated manner to ensure that the quality is high enough? And also we reward, we financially reward people. We're not, a lot of user-generated sites don't pay anybody, right? And it works. It works for Huffington Post. I mean, it's making the companies themselves rich, but it's hard. I mean, what we've done is we've created an ecosystem where we actually pay teachers, and they're earning good money, and they're being valued for what they do. And, so it's really tough to figure out the right blend of doing user-generated.
This is an amazing innovation you've created of paying teachers.
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, it's an amazing innovation. In Silicon Valley, it's a huge aversion to paying
Yes.
anybody in the content business.
Yes.
Let's take another question.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the genesis of new areas of content? For example, I work at Ancestry.com, and part of my responsibility is teaching the audience and building materials that would teach them how to research their German ancestors or their Irish ancestors and so on. And I'm just very interested in the process of, how do you decide and how do you work with entities like ours who are considering what do we do next to really make that work, because we have these small group instruction sessions that are in demand by a lot more people than we can deliver to currently.
Correct.
And what's the right way to think about that?
I mean, one of the most popular requests that we get is to create custom content for any one of our corporate or academic customers. And what we've decided is that we are going to stick to what's best for the bulk membership. And the way that we determine what to publish is multifold. We listen to the members, we listen to what they're requesting. So if they're requesting training on Ancestry.com, most likely we're going to create it, or whatever it may be, if it's Marketo or a certain any kind of new things that didn't exist when we started Lynda.com are some of our more popular topics, like blogging and content management systems like Joomla and Drupal and WordPress. So we definitely listen to the requests, and then we also have champions who own the responsibility of the category, and they themselves are industry credible experts, and they recruit. They look to all the top authors and bloggers and experts out there, and they go to conferences like this and listen to speakers, and we have recruiters, and so that's one way. We also get referrals from our existing teachers, and every so often we predict that something is going to be really popular because we're domain experts, and we aren't just relying on the analytics to tell us, because that tells you about the past. It doesn't predict the future.
Yeah.
So we do it in all these different ways. But we don't do custom content, and that's been a decision that hasn't always been popular. I mean, there would be an entire business unit that could be built around that, and there would be tremendous demand for it. But it's a really different kind of business than our business, and we're a
And
subscription
they would also want to
business.
get their hands in the editorial, right? So if
yeah.
I am
It's work for hire, it's client, relationships. It's a very different kind of business. And it's not a bad business, good business idea for someone who's looking for one, but it's not our business.
great, let's take another question.
My name's Doug Kalish. What kind of pressure are you seeing from the free resources like Khan Academy, and how are you going to differentiate yourself from them?
Well, we love Khan Academy. We've had Saul out to speak at our company, and absolutely love what he's doing. And we have, free is everywhere. Free is the majority of what is out there. And our business has grown 30 to 40% every year, year over year, since we started, if not faster than that. In the beginning, it was like 100% a year. And so it may be slowing us down, but we're going at a perfectly wonderful clip, and we're able to do what we're out to do, and we're able to grow it and expand upon it and have happy membership. That's the really important thing, that the people who use lynda.com, think very highly of it, and that's the most important thing to us.
Good. Another question? You have one up here, Kira.
First off, Lynda, thank you so much, because back in the late 90s, I think people forget that if you were a technical creative and you were doing Photoshop and Final Cut, there was no really other way to self-empower yourself. So first, thank you for that. Second, I've worked at one point for Kaplan, did some work for them back in the day. And then now looking at how everything's going, can you speak a little bit about, politically, the ramifications, because it's such a disruptive technology to such a huge space. And I'm reading about how I think some schools, I'm trying to think if it was maybe Amherst and Duke, pushed back on some of the larger online platforms. Do you find any political pushback because you are making education cheaper and more affordable and more accessible to people that are already more entrenched in the older traditional ways?
I think in the beginning we got a lot more pushback than we do today, because the teachers who embrace lynda.com end up loving it, because it's liberating to them. Because, like at UCLA, it's become a prerequisite to the filmmaking classes to take lynda.com Final Cut lessons, because the teacher wants to teach about the storytelling, the edit, the cut, the film grammar, helping students with their individual projects. The teacher, it's a huge responsibility to have to stay up to speed on every version of Final Cut, and then when a new technology comes around, and there's so many plugins and just aspects to it. So we really believe that we're a complement. We hear it all the time, that we're a complement to education, that we're not a competition. We're not emulating school. We're not offering certification. We're not offering accreditation. We're really an online library resource that will help anybody learn these tools, including teachers.
We do know from this very interview that people are attaching it to their resume. And
Right.
we do know that you're making documentaries about the application of this stuff. So, it is completely possible to skip film school and use Lynda, or
It is.
eventually will be.
That's right. No, I think it's not an either or, first of
Right.
all. It can be an and I'd like to believe that we're an and, that we're a good complement.
Today.
But the problem is that there's no new UCLA being built. We have a finite number of higher education institutions, and we have a much bigger population that needs and wants that education. And that is the beauty. It's not a substitute in that it should replace the brick and mortar, but it is clearly, for some people, it's their only option. And for that reason alone, it's fantastic.
Well, what do you think about the value of college? Because that comes up a lot, and people feel and it does, because Lynda's so cheap, I think people maybe distance the two things, college and Lynda, because it's so affordable and one is so not affordable. But the fact is, the skills that you teach are more marketable than the skills that the magnitude, exponentially, just infinitely more expensive solution does. If one were to take the same amount of time and energy and put it into Lynda that they did going to college, they would have I can say, absolutely greater chance of being employed.
Well, I don't see it that way at all. lynda.com is great for people who are already working. It's a lifelong learning tool. what happens when you go to physical school, so much more happens than what you learn. The relationships you're going to make for the rest of your life are formed. The kinds of discussions and interaction. I just wrote a post on LinkedIn called Lessons That Cannot Be Learned Online about the power of critiquing and the power of group discussions. And those are soft skills that are so important in industry. To be able to think, not just to have knowledge, but to be able to think and interact and collaborate and present, and those are skills that are very, very difficult to teach online. Possible substitute if you don't have the option. And learning to communicate in online communities is a whole other social skill that we all need. But I think in the perfect world, physical education is really needed and really important and really valuable. Unfortunately, we don't live in the perfect world, and there is a shortage of schools. There's the affordability is not there, the accessibility is not there, and it's really difficult to scale in the way that online is possible to scale. So it's finding the sweet spot of what's best done online and what's best done in person. And my LinkedIn article, I was talking about, go join a Toastmasters group, or go join a book club, or do things where you interact in social settings with people and talk about ideas and learn these skills, because these skills are really valued in industry too. You don't just want a person who's a robot who knows a lot of things.
It feels like these two disciplines are going to crash into each other, and you're saying, and they probably complement, but it would be really fantastic if school got a lot cheaper because they weren't actually teaching you how to use the software, they were just teaching you how to interact and critically think. They could actually lower the cost of it, maybe.
I mean, the truth of the matter is that it costs money to live in our country, right? We all want to have good paying jobs. We all want to, have the dream of what that means to own a house and have a car and have a family and blah, 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 all those things. And, when you just talk about cheapening everything and not paying people, that is happening. That's happening on a massive scale, more than in education in every industry. I mean, the whole country is reverberating on that exact problem. So, I think we do need to make education more affordable and more accessible, and online does that. But I also think we don't want to lose in-person education entirely, and it has a cost. And whether that cost is going to be absorbed by the government or by individuals, it's not going to be free. It has a cost. We have to be really honest about that.
All right, final question.
All right. Hi, I'm Nick Pettit from Treehouse.
Hi.
So I thought you
For
made...
people who don't know, Treehouse is conceived as another online teaching resource.
Yes.
That's the giggling.
So I thought you made a really interesting point about speed of access. I mean, I think that is, definitely really valuable. I guess there's been this huge explosion in learn to code platforms where there's a lot of interactivity and there's a lot of hands-on practice. What do you think the value of that really is, and do you think that's something that you'll implement anytime soon? I mean, beyond just like badges and gamification, that kind of thing.
I think it's really huge. I love what you guys are doing. We talk about Treehouse a lot in our meetings, and Code
we
Academy.
We talk about Lynda a lot.
And all, and all of the other, Code Academies, and there was another one, something Bright. I was just found the other day about teaching women to code. There's one that's just specifically for women. And we do get pushback from some people who say they would rather learn that way. They really want the interactivity. They really want to know that they're doing something right. They love the community aspect that you're building and sites like yours are building. And I guess I don't see it as an either or. I can see how, we might have some developers who love lynda.com because of the speed of access, and they can go, first of all, our library is, much more massive than what you teach. You're doing an amazing job, and it's not any kind of diss on what you have done. But I think it actually does speak to the different type of business when you are creating the gamification and the badges and actual curriculum that you go through in a linear order, it's a huge overhead. It takes a lot of time, and it's to make that is
10 times more time.
10 times easily. And so our whole thing is about coming to market quickly, satisfying the need that people need for sort of like a on-demand reference library. And so I think it could work. I could actually see someone being a member of both of our sites. But I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I think there are times where people really prefer to have the interaction, the assessment, the grade, the certification, the degree, all of those things, that is the goal. And that's perfectly fine. I don't see them as being mutually exclusive.
And if you're doing, how to do the link in Gmail, that doesn't necessarily need to be gamified.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe that's such a minor,
Yeah, but let's say that I'm a company and I want to know that I've just deployed, Google Docs throughout my whole company, and I've bought a service and I want to know that all my employees are actually learning it. And that's tough because we can't guarantee that the employees are learning it. I don't know that, Treehouse can guarantee it either. Nobody can really, the truth of it is there are people with degrees who still don't know how to do what you need them to do. And there are people with certifications, and you get them into your company and they don't know how to teach anything. They don't know how to learn anything outside that very directed way to learn. And you kind of pride yourself on people who are resourceful, who can learn things on the fly and learn new things that they didn't know they had to learn, when they first got their job and all of that. That is where I think that the learning to think, I think in-person education does that the best. And I think things like what Treehouse is doing and others are the next best thing. And it's great for the people who can't do the in-person. And sometimes even better.
We dipped a little bit into the political issues around education. Let's dive right in for just the final question, since we've been talking for almost 45 minutes now. If you were in charge of education today, and you're probably, not probably, you are one of the top 10 minds, I think, in education, certainly in the top 2 or 3 entrepreneurs in education in our country, what would Lynda do if you were in charge? And I asked Mitch the same question yesterday. What would you do if you were in charge of education today? If they gave you these billions of budgets, what would Lynda do?
Whoa, really good question. And, this is probably Lynda Weinman, not lynda.com speaking.
Yes,
okay?
Absolutely.
So I really believe that we have far too big a focus on measurement and assessment and grades, and the way we've constructed school just doesn't really encourage people to learn as freely and fully as they can. And so for me, I think the entire notion of the way we divide grades is wrong. I have a cousin in 9th grade algebra. He finished the book in 2 weeks and he got in trouble from his teacher because, well, what am I going to do with you for the rest of the term? You look at people on Khan Academy and you have little kids, you have young kids and they're able to get into calculus when they're, very young, way younger than we're going to teach them calculus under our current. So I would basically, change it very dramatically, where I would try to make it as non-standardized as possible. I think, we have this standardized education system that is based on this false belief that people are standard. You have so many learning disabilities. You have so many different flavors of people who can learn, some who can learn fast and some who can learn slow and some who are good at art and some who are good at math. And I think this whole idea that everybody should come out as this cookie cutter standard, have the same education is just a false premise. So, this is very radical, I'm sure. It's not going to be adopted anytime soon. But I like to think about, real learning, not about, like part of what I think is so amazing about online learning is the anonymity of it. The fact that I can be really bad at German and nobody has to hear me mispronounce everything and be, adult and not learn that word. And, I do that in the privacy between me and my computer. And it for me, it encourages me rather than the embarrassment of being in a class and, being the worst one or being shy or being this or being that. And so I think there's so many things that technology enables that make for true personalization. And I also think that the role of teachers is just fundamentally different than it is set up to be, where the teacher does not have to be the expert. The teacher is the facilitator. The teacher is somebody who champions students with their goals, their aptitudes, their finding their passion, finding their love of learning. And that learning doesn't only happen in school. Learning happens for your whole life, and how to make people, open to the idea of learning new things and change and embracing the fact that they don't know everything. So I would have a pretty radical view of it.
Wow, I like it. Lynda Weinman, thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
It was so great.
Thank you so much.